whatever. Hi. Margaret and Terry are family. That's what I need.
When you get to this age,
We'll see.
Morning, everybody.
sure.
Every other seat. See, no preference. I think it is relatively new. I don't think it's brand new, but I think it's relatively new.
It's been a while since I've been in.
Yeah. Oh, it's,
We should use this place more often.
I don't know, it's a nice space, isn't it? How are the grandbabies?
I don't get to see them much, but when I do, they're doing great.
So, Tabitha, right?
Talita, Dr. Tweedy, yes.
Yeah, okay, how are you related? She your child?
She's my oldest, she's my daughter, my only sister's daughter.
She's your sister's
First daughter. Oh, yeah.
Because you keep, I
She's
keep
the one
thinking
that
she's yours.
adopted Beth and Mara. Remember with
Okay,
Beth and Mara?
yes.
Talita is their sister there.
Okay, gotcha. All right. You got so lots of children, I think you. So where is your son now?
Which one?
Your youngest, just right.
Oh, I put him in a mental health therapy treatment drug facility. Yes.
I didn't realize he was having issues, I'm sorry.
Well, no, just, yeah, we smoked a pot, but that's enough. He never tested anything but that, but that's too much for me. And with all his other
Yeah.
developmental delayed and other issues, it's just, it was getting out of control. And he now says, Mom, I am so glad I can actually watch. Oh, he's like a history on here. Got shot in the rain. And I said, well, how do you know that? He said, I'm watching the news. I can watch TV now. I said, yeah, you're so easy. You could never sit down and watch a movie or anything. He said, that's all we get to do now.
Well, I'm glad he's receptive and that it's going on.
Yeah, he's good.
Is your husband talking about retirement?
Yeah, I'm trying to make him this term next year.
Strong.
He's going to do it this term next year. Isn't this a hoot? Look at these pictures. That happened last night after the county commissioners meeting.
Okay, so I was watching, and I couldn't figure out why all these people were there, and then it dawned on me why they were there. So what is going on?
Juana Bigelow, she spoke last night. She's been real active in different protests and whatnot. But that's what she picked up on her camera last night after the county commission meeting, and she spoke.
In Graham?
I'm not sure where she lives.
Oh, this is in her neighborhood.
That's at her front door.
Where does she live?
I don't know if she lives in Graham. I'm not sure if she lives in Graham. She lives in Burlington.
Well, this is the best picture. Can you see that?
Oh.
So, did they just run their doorbell? Did they?
I don't know. I'm just reading that one. I haven't spoken with her.
Okay, here's some other, there's little pictures.
I just said, what you want to turn me back to the police?
Here you go.
Well, I don't know the details on your situation. You're kind of that sort of got
I'm
lost in
still
the
waiting. I don't know if it's related to me doing the same or if it's related to my son and his acquaintances. So they still working on it.
Need sound check?
Yes.
Check. Testing, check.
You mad at us?
new people. Okay.
Everybody ready? Okay, great. Good morning, and thank you for coming out today for a special announcement from Alamance-Burlington Schools. I'm Bruce Benson, Superintendent with ADSS, and with me I'm pleased to have Allison Gant, the Chair of our school board, along with board members Patsy Simpson, Pam Thompson, and Steve Van Pelt. Are several members of my administrative staff who are not in this space, because we're trying to limit the number of folks that are in the room, but they'll be available if there are questions that I might need them to respond to. All summer we've been making plans for what school will look like when students return to us during this unprecedented pandemic. Like all other school districts across the state and the nation, we have been diligent, dedicated, and flexible in developing plans to offer our students a high-quality education in as safe an environment as possible based upon health and safety guidelines from the CDC and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. As you know, all schools have been working on plans for 3 different scenarios, plans A, B, and C, with the ability to pivot from one plan to another as needed based upon the current situation with the pandemic. In ABSS, we've spent most of our energy focused on plans B and C, as these are the most complex to complete in these challenging times. Last week, Governor Cooper announced that all schools would open under Plan B for the 2020-21 school year. At that time, ABSS announced that we would meet the state's Plan B reopening requirements with an A-B day schedule to reopen schools with less than 50% of our students attending on alternating days. This model is our preferred choice because it means that all of our K-12 students will have more time in class with direct instruction from their teachers than other models discussed in North Carolina and across the country. In addition, we will be able to ensure that our students have access to nutritious meals each day. Our Plan B also offers remote learning options for families who are unsure about whether they want to have their child return to the classroom, even under social distancing guidelines. We surveyed our staff members about their teaching preferences. We've surveyed our families about their preferred return to school ideas, and we've also asked families about their needs for bus transportation and for technology needs for remote learning. With all of the careful plans we have developed based upon the information we received to date, we will be ready to launch Plan B when needed. But since we made our announcement to reopen under Plan B last week, state-level guidance for school reopening has continued to change. The National Center for Disease Control was supposed to release updated guidance last week that hasn't been issued yet, and we are fast approaching the start of school on August 17th. After our initial surveys of families and staff, families were asked to commit to at-home or in-person learning, as well as transportation needs. We are hoping that with additional time and improvement in COVID-19 metrics, more families will select in-person learning. With these things in mind, and knowing that the number of COVID-19 cases continues to rise across the state and in our community, I feel it's important for us to pause on our Plan B back-to-school rollout for now. On Thursday, July 23rd, we have a special call meeting of our Board of Education scheduled, and one important item on the agenda is a continued discussion of our back-to-school plans for our 23,000 students and their families. At that meeting, I plan to recommend to the board that we instead begin the school year under guidelines we have developed for Plan C reopening, which means total remote learning for all students in grades K through 12 for the first 9 weeks of the school year. During this first grading period of at-home learning beginning on August 17th, we will continue to monitor the COVID-19 metrics to determine when we believe that a gradual return to in-school learning, our Plan B, can begin. We will pause our Plan B for the AB day schedule to implement when our community is in a better position with the COVID-19 infection rate. At this point, we'll be able to communicate that we are able to transition from fully remote learning to a blended model of in-class learning and at-home learning on alternating days using our Plan B guidelines. We will continue to update our ABSS back-to-school plan with more details for Plan B and Plan C as federal and statewide guidance continues to evolve. We are optimistic that if everyone in our community will follow the simple guidelines for wearing a mask, washing hands, and waiting 6 feet apart, we will be able to welcome our students back to our classrooms on Plan B later this fall. We plan to begin sharing information with our staff and families today about our transition to Plan C to kick off our 2020-21 school year. Additional information will be available as a part of the board agenda later today, including what at-home learning schedules will look like across grade levels. This is a challenging time, no doubt, but I am extremely proud of our ABSS team working so hard to be ready for our new school year in support of our students and our families. We will be successful together. Thank you. And as I said earlier, we have other members of my executive team available to respond to any specific questions. So at this point, we'll be happy to respond to questions from you all.
How much did parent and teacher feedback play into this decision from your perspective to recommend going to Plan C?
Well, we put an initial survey out to get some sense of what folks were thinking in terms of a return, but then we followed that up with asking our parents to commit to one model or another. And so those numbers continue to increase in terms of families that are looking for a full remote option, and we don't expect that survey to close until August 27th. But in looking at how the numbers are growing, it has created some concerns for us in terms of the logistics of being able to provide both experiences for families in our community.
What did the results look like right now, even though you're still getting parents responding?
Well, the initial survey that was closed, I can share those numbers with you all. The initial survey, we had about 8,300 families respond to the initial survey, and we had about half of them say that they would return to an in-person learning model, and about 40% preferred a complete virtual, and then we had some other families, approximately 8%, that said they would be looking for other options. And one thing that's important to us is that we want to be the first choice for education in our community, and we certainly want to put models out there that would allow us to hang on to our families and not have them look elsewhere for their K-12 experience.
And along with that input, how are y'all monitoring the case numbers here in Alamance County?
So we work closely with our local health department, and we're looking to schedule an initial meeting with them here shortly to talk about some of the metrics in our community that will be part of the conversation that we have with the board in our meeting on Thursday morning.
You mentioned a survey to parents. Any thoughts on what employees thought about coming back?
So we also surveyed our employees to get a handle on whether or not they had concerns about returning to the workplace. We had about 1,960 responses, and of that, approximately 55% of staff preferred to work as usual, Plan B, and the other we're looking at a remote option. Is that sufficient wait time? Any other questions?
Would Plan C also include the pre-K?
We have a plan for pre-K as well, and that schedule will be a part of what we release with the board agenda later today.
And so your recommendation that you're going to make to the board, is that something that the Board of Education is going to vote on?
I would hope to have the support of the board by the time we get finished with the meeting. I think the board will have additional questions, and we have additional, more specific information that we want to share with them as to what this will look like. I do want to say that we want to get back into our schools and return to an in-person teaching and learning as soon as possible, but we also want to make sure it's safe. And then we also need to make sure that our families and our students and our staff are comfortable in returning. So as we continue to monitor during the first marking period, if conditions are improving and we get a sense that we would see a larger number of families opt to return to in-person learning, we could be in a position to change and shift to Plan B with some sufficient notice to our families.
For that first 9 weeks of remote learning, you said that the district would be sending a suggested schedule for parents, because I've spoken to a lot of parents and that's been the biggest thing. I mean, it's been a while since a lot of us have been in school ourselves, so you're trying to figure out how do we structure their day. It's not like you can just have a kid on 5 hours a day staring at a computer screen.
So I think we did a good job in transitioning to at-home learning in the spring, but we have much more structure going into what we're proposing for the fall, and flexibility for families. So if you've got parents that are working and can't help with some facilitation of at-home learning, there will be access to recorded videos. So it's not an absolute that students must participate at a certain time, but there will be more opportunities to engage directly with teachers in real time through video conferencing, as well as a really well-defined learning progression aligned to state standards so that we can see that students are growing.
That kind of leads me to my question. I think we've all probably done stories with families that were able to do this, but we've all done stories with families that it just was so difficult to do this remote learning. Have you heard those stories?
We have, and we're trying to be cognizant and put in our plans together to address those issues and provide as much flexibility as possible. So, we're going to distribute laptops to everybody that needs one at home. We have sufficient equipment to be able to do that. We're going to make wireless hotspots available to families that don't have internet access, provided that there's signal in their area. But we're also prepared to do the paper packets for families where that's not going to work. And then, again, flexibility about what goes on during the course of the day. One of the key elements of our plan is that it's really focused on the work that students are going to be doing at home. And so we'll have a body of evidence that will reflect that work, that will tell us whether or not kids are growing in their learning progression. So that's an important part of our plan.
Will we continue with the summer feeding program?
So it's our intention to continue feeding everyone. We have a little bit of a challenge here, and I expect that we'll see something come from the state, federal government at some point in the not too distant future. But the waiver that we have right now to continue feeding the way that we are currently feeding, which is a grab and go and a delivery model using our yellow school buses, that waiver runs out at the end of August. But I think given the number of school systems that are beginning to look at a potential shift in their strategy for reopening, I think it's highly likely that we'll see some support there before we get to the end of the month. But that is our intention. All right, well, if there aren't any questions, thank you again for spending some time with us here this morning, and we appreciate your help in getting this information out to our community.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bisson.